Hi, and welcome to our January episode of Hingham Happenings. I'm your host, Jenny Sawerda. Let's take a look at what's coming up on this episode. The Old Ordinary held its annual Candlelight Tour series. Hingham High School presented the This I Believe exhibit at the Hingham Public Library. A local author spoke about his new book at the Hingham Barnes & Noble. Derby Academy hosted a panel about young women in sports. Faculty members from the South Shore Conservatory performed in their annual holiday concert. All this and more coming up on Hingham Happenings. As the nights get shorter and the winter chill enters the air, the Old Ordinary reminds us of what winters were like during the 17th century.
The Candlelight Tours are an annual series of tours in the first 3 weekends of November, held by the Hingham Historical Society for as long as I can remember. So typically the Candlelight Tours are a shortened version of the summer tour, and it's intended to show the reality of living during the winter in New England during the colonial period. The emphasis of the Candlelight Tours is more about surviving during the winter and trying to keep, heat in the house and trying to have enough food, and explaining the differences between living during the winter in the colonial period versus surviving in the winter in New England in the 21st century. Well, frankly, it's kind of a in-between time between not cold enough to really make the point about winter and so cold that we cannot be in the Old Ordinary. So it's both convenience and it's to create that atmosphere of cold and dark that you really need to get a sense of how it was in the winter. The Candlelight Tours, I feel like, in the way that the Old Ordinary is like stepping into the past, the Candlelight Tours really amplify that because they're set up in a way that the house is kind of dark, there isn't a ton of heat in here, so it's about as cold as it would have been in November in the colonial period. And we really do a great job, I think, of pointing out specific elements of the Old Ordinary to create this atmosphere of hardship during the winter. And it's like, you really come out appreciating going back to your car with heat, I think. Excellent, yeah, so they associated they did the common sense thing and said, well, if we have the biggest fireplace possible, then obviously we're gonna be warmer, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, these kinds of fireplaces really contributed to a lot of draft being able to get into the house and did not keep people very warm at all. Actually, aside from us who were standing around this circle, no one here would be able to feel the heat from the fireplace in the winter in the actual 17th century. People also tended to get married in the winter because you really had to sleep with 2 or 3 people in a bed if you wanted to stay warm and not freeze to death overnight. This kind of contraption here, you would have hung a pot or a pot from which you were cooking, and a woman, instead of walking into the fireplace and dying, she could have used this to pull this out a little bit. So yes, it was definitely an important technological advancement. So originally when settlers came here, they wrote back to their relatives in England and talked about the kind of like abundance of firewood that they found in New England. But by 1690, I think the majority of woodland area like that had been cleared out. They went a little bit too hard at first. So by about 1700, these giant roaring fires were really like a thing of the past. Still, you needed to accumulate enough firewood to last through the winter. So the men and boys were really charged with the task of getting firewood to make fires and make heat. So they could go as far as Maine to their own place where they would gather wood, and they would chop down trees, bring it all back to Hingham, and then they would build a wood pile that was sometimes as big as the annex.
We are here with the History Hunters. They are an after-school group that we have that goes and explores different historical sites. We were at the Old Ordinary, and we were looking at what it would be like to be at the Ordinary at night in the cold, and how they had to survive without running water, electricity, no central heat.
When you walk into the Old Ordinary, I feel like you really walk into the past. And the Ordinary itself is an interesting feature of New England colonial life that a lot of people aren't fully aware of. This kind of cross between a tavern and a house, that's an interesting juxtaposition, and you get to see how both the family lived, but also how the house influenced the town. The history hunters with Mrs. Gustafson come every year. I think children respond better in general to stepping into history versus reading about history in a book. So this perhaps gives them that tangible, real experience with what history was like. Hingham needs to take advantage of its rich history and the immense amount of artifacts and documentation that we have. It's so important to the identity of Hingham, I think, as a sort of colonial town that grew into this sort of suburb of Boston. It's so important to thinking about what it means to live in Hingham, to have something like the Old Ordinary, and to be able to examine the differences between living in the colonial period and maybe some of the connections you have too. Like, we all hate winter in New England, and so did people in 1740. The differences can lead to connection with the past and can lead to the formation of our identity and the way we think about ourselves and our heritage as people who live in Hingham.
Hingham High School students' ceramics projects were recently on display at the Hingham Public Library. The sculptures represented students' personal beliefs, an idea which was inspired by NPR's hit show, This I Believe.
Today we have the culmination of a 4-week unit that I did with Rose Papuga, the Hingham High School art teacher, and it's part of my practicum with Mass College of Art. So I designed the lesson to teach ceramics students about skill building as well as concept. They started out listening to a presentation based on National Public Radio's This I Believe series. In that series, people tell about themselves and what they believe in a 3-minute essay. So you get to hear a wide variety of people's stories. So where adolescents are thinking about their own beliefs and becoming adults, this project was to give them time to do that more. As standardized tests work, the students are memorizing information for specific questions, but in art class they have time to give more of an opinion.
So the librarian Totsi approached me and wanted to have an art reception in the children's section, and normally we just take the glass case for a month or 2 months each school year and put a lot of great works in there, but she wanted to do something bigger. And I have a student teacher this fall. She approached me and said, I really want to do a show, and I thought that was the perfect combination. Let's do one at the library.
Our involvement is the space. We were thinking of ways to get people to know and see the children's department more, the children's and young adult department, I should be more specific. And we thought it would be a good collaboration by having the artwork from the Hingham High School art students display their pieces here. The inspiration for the idea was the adults often have art shows and art openings downstairs in the Dolphin and the Clemens Gallery, and we wanted to be able to showcase the work of the students in Hingham.
Student teacher Nicole Sahar asked me if we could do a show, and her whole concept was around NPR's This I Believe. She wanted the students to come up with a belief that they held and then create a sculpture to represent that belief.
It came about that I had always heard about these This I Believe stories, and they were so personal, and I was inspired to find a way for the ceramic students to make forms and use their ceramic skills. Some of them use wheel throwing techniques, but to also pair it with a concept. So the students kept research journals in a type of diary format and discussed their ideas with each other. And then the most difficult part perhaps was not only finding out what they believe in, but how to give that a visual form without words. The library gives the students a chance to work as artists, where they take their work in the ceramic studio at the school out into a more public space. So part of our unit was realizing how artists take steps to exhibit. So we worked on invitations and press releases, posters, social media, all different forms of publicity. And we talked about how when you bring your work into a new space, you also have to think about how you would curate a show and how the lighting would affect things and what works look good with each other and what don't. So it's a more professional experience.
It's a big space. It has a lot of traffic that normally might not see our show. and it's a place where young students could look at what the high school students are doing.
We believe strongly in the sense in our involvement in the community, and by having the students work here, it connects us more closely with them. And as the Young Adult and Children's Department, it's really to engage students throughout the school system and see that the library is a great place to come. I do hope so. I hope we can do more of this. I think I think their artwork is beautiful. I think it really adds a dimension to our department, so I'm really pleased with the way tonight has turned out so far.
I am really amazed at the job that the students did, because it took 4 weeks of writing and working together to come up with these very personalized ideas. The work is all different. They're not all doing the same image. They really came up with a form unique to them, and they also had to troubleshoot the sculptural problems that came up with making that particular form, whether it was how the clay attached and how wet or dry it had to be before they could put different pieces together. Each project had its own special situation.
So I want to thank Rose and her student teacher for making this possible. People come through and they remark on their work. It just gives a sense of joy to everyone, I think.
South Shore native, author Alan Patch recently returned to his roots in Hingham for a book signing at Barnes & Noble, where he gave a presentation, signed books, and had a chance to meet his fans.
Today we had Alan Patch. He's the author of Passage at Delphi. He's originally from the Hingham area, so when he reached out, we were really happy to bring him in to celebrate the release of his book and come in and talk about his passion.
So I'm going to be signing, talking first, but then signing books on Passage at Delphi. And I'm going to be describing a little bit of the background and why I wrote the book and what I find interesting about history and the connections of history, and really the connections of past, present, and future.
So in my book, I have 2 professors from San Diego State University, and they go on a vacation that goes very, very bad. And that's the basis of the story. They don't understand what's going to happen to them, but what they're going to do is they're going to be forced to learn the lessons of history in real time. It's totally different reading about history in a book. We can imagine what's going on, but it's got to be completely different from being there. And so, hey, that's the great part of fiction. I can take my characters, I can throw them into a situation which they have no skills for necessarily, but and then see what happens.
And this book is really, really gripping. So far what I've read is you've been able to see the underpinnings of the past coming through and really starting to the tendrils coming in and touching the lives of the 2 main characters. It's really exciting. The way it was described to me is it was adventure, time travel, heroics, all mixed in together, and so far it has lived up to that.
They're going to discover what they're made of. They're going to discover also maybe what they're willing to die for. And then thirdly, they're going to discover how much they mean to each other. And that's going to be the basis of the story. This is the first book in a series. And the second book, which we see here, Delphi's Chosen, that's going to be out in the first quarter. The third book is what I'm writing right now. It's a bunch of stories that are tied together and are built around this idea that of tying together the past, the present, and the future based on human nature and what we've seen through history.
When I retired from the Navy in 2004, 2005, I had a little extra time and I had this idea in my head and I started developing it and started writing the story. And so, with different flights back and forth and a little spare time, I started getting involved in a story. It's not just history, it's a bit of a philosophy. But at the end, it's really an adventure story. It's very entertaining because my 2 professors, they don't know that this is going to happen. Their whole world is upended. And they're really sent back to learn the lessons of history.
Anytime we get an opportunity to have a publisher, an author come in and talk about a book that they've published, we try to jump on it. And it's especially great when we have an author that is established, that has a following, and can really come in and talk to his fans about their book. So that's why we're always looking for people to come in and share their love the same love that we have for books, for reading, come in and share their love for it as well.
I went on a research trip to Greece to get some of the more of the background information, and after I got there and went to the site of Delphi, which is a very impressive site, I had to change things a little bit because it's different when you look at pictures. Once you stand there at the site and see what it's like, then it changes the way you think about it. So when you walk around and you can smell and see, and you walk the ground, it's different. It gives you a different sense of what should be in the book. And they really have a reverence still for Delphi. Well, I'm really happy to be here because Hingham is kind of a homecoming for me. Hingham, it keeps its quaintness, but at the same time it develops and grows. And this Barnes & Noble is really one of the biggest Barnes & Nobles I've ever seen. It's really nice, and there's always people coming in here, so it's good to see that people like to read.
By tying in people from the community and bringing those people into the store, we're hoping to help kind of solidify that connection, that people can realize that this is not just my bookstore, not just the managers or Barnes & Noble, it is your community bookstore. So that's why it's so important for us to have people from the area, authors, the musicians, all that sort of stuff, come in and really make it their own.
Yeah, they can check out that website and look up Passage of Delphi on Facebook and get some information on the book and the series, and hope they get a look at it. Get ready for a great adventure and a wild ride.
TV host and sports reporter Maura Driscoll Farden, along with several other women, held a Young Women in Sports panel at Derby Academy, where they spoke about the importance and value of being involved and how to empower and educate young girls in sports.
We are here for a Young Women in Sport panel, and it's our hope to inspire, educate, and connect young women who are involved in any sport at any level, mostly sort of the middle school age up through high school, and just sending a positive message about the value and benefits of sports.
The idea is that young athletes will learn from this symposium about things, have some ideas of things they can take with them when they go back to their real lives, different ways to look at their athletic participation, ways to connect with other people that are doing a sport, and hopefully they'll take away some inspiration.
It's beneficial because you're really getting a lot of different perspectives and different stories on athletes and coaches and women that have been involved in sports since a very young age, and what their journeys have been like to get them to where they are today and all the lessons they've learned.
My background in sports, I was a two-sport college athlete. I also played 3 sports in high school, but even younger than that, I had the opportunity to do recreation, team sports, and any activity that came up to me.
I went to Brooks School where I was a 3-sport athlete, and then I went on to the University of Virginia to play lacrosse, where we were a very successful team, winning a couple ACC championships and NCAA finalists. Then I went on to coach at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, where I am now volunteering and then also working as a program coordinator for a non-global association.
Grew up the youngest of 4 kids in a very athletic family, and had an opportunity to go to college and play 2 sports and then go on to coach college hockey and then eventually coach in the 2014 Olympic Games. So just believe in education through athletics and the benefits of it for life.
I was a gymnast growing up, so I trained very seriously at a young age. I was fortunate to be an elite gymnast and competed at a national level, and went to UCLA where I competed for 4 years, and I was a captain there. And after my sports participation in college, I got into sports television, and I worked as a color commentator for ESPN and for NBC, and for Lifetime Television I worked in women's college basketball, the LPGA. I covered all sorts of women's sports, and I still do that today, and that's how I got involved in this forum.
I started playing sports in the early 1960s when women weren't even really allowed to participate in sports. No marathons for women, very few organized teams, but I played as many sports in those days as I could. And then I decided to major in physical education in college. As soon as I graduated from college, I started to coach, and I have had a lifelong career in athletics since then.
I've affected young athletes just in my, while I was at Virginia, I did a lot of outreach and coaching young teams in the area down in Charlottesville, Virginia. It was really important to me. It's always been a passion of mine working with young women and young females to really give them the confidence they need to go on in sports, but also in life, because in sports you learn so much about yourself, your character, and that's really what I want to demonstrate and send the message to all young women, that they need to be confident, that they are important, that they do have meaning, and that can be translated to on the field and off the field.
I think helping women recognize what they're capable of and continuing to build on their self-confidence and self-esteem is really critical to the rest of their lives, and I think it's a great investment in the rest of their lives, and so just continuing to develop the whole person through sport.
My favorite part about today's event was having the opportunity to have people that I either played with, coached with, or was connected to through sports, and having us deliver our message to the young upcoming athletes.
My favorite part of it is that one of my closest friends, Mel McLaughlin, this is her brain trust, something that she's so passionate about, and she was a great teammate of mine in college and has been a lifelong friend, and that I wanted to be here for her and contribute in any way to make this a positive day.
My advice to any girl that wants to pursue any career, but particularly in sports, is to just go out and be the best that you can. Work really hard and don't let anyone put limits on you. Try to come up with your own roadmap for life, because no one can tell you what you can and can't do. Only you know that inside your own heart and mind.
The first thing is, I think, to raise your hand high and say, yes, I can, and pursue your passion, whether it be a team sport or an individual sport, but pursue the thing you love the most, enjoy it along the way, and think about how to promote community, which is really what sport is.
The South Shore Conservatory rang in the holiday season with a concert highlighting music from holiday movies. The concert featured music from Home Alone, Frozen, and many more holiday favorites.
You are here at the Conservatory's Conservatory Concert Series. This is a series that involves only faculty performers, and it is sponsored in part by Boston Private. So we're able to offer these concerts as a gift to the community, our students and friends, for free. They include receptions. You can come and meet the performers afterwards, have a lovely cup of wine, glass of wine if you want to, or I don't know, some seltzer for the kids. There's always cookies, and talk to the performers about why they're doing the pieces that they're doing. Today's performance is our holiday concert, and there's a little something for everybody. We decided this year to use the theme of holiday music from the movies.
There are numbers from the Charlie Brown Christmas. There's stuff from Rudolph. There you've got running the whole gamut up to from Polar Express. I'm singing a song from that, Believe. Yeah, those I would call the highlights. And there's a string quartet version of the song from Frozen, which will be, I'm sure, crowd pleaser.
I think it's great because it appeals to people who might not necessarily always listen to classical music, but everybody grew up watching movies, and a lot of people grew up watching holiday movies specifically, so there's famous music that goes along with that. So even if they don't resonate with the type of music that we typically perform, there are a lot of people out there who do resonate with the music that we have at today's concert.
Holiday movies are such a huge part of our American Christmas tradition, so to have a concert devoted to that, I think, is pretty great and unique in that way, and yet, you know, it's so sort of indelibly linked to how we understand Christmas. It's always, you know, every year people watch their favorite holiday movies, so to sort of excerpt the music from those experiences and those films, I think, is really fun for people to get to be a part of.
Well, again, it's a little bit different than your traditional choir concert. You know, I went to a concert in Norwell last weekend, and I went to the Plymouth Philharmonic Pops concert last night. This concert is going to be nothing like that. There's not a big orchestra, there's not a full chorus. It's a more intimate setting. The performers are going to talk to you and tell you why they love the pieces or why they chose the piece that they're performing. I think that makes it a little bit special because the space is not large. You really get to feel like you're in someone's living room and being a part of what they do. So that makes it a little bit different. And then, of course, being able to commune with them afterwards, I think really makes a difference. Being able to meet the performers and talk to them, and I don't know, for me, that's what makes the concert series so special, because the faculty are really amazing performers in their own right. But being able to meet them and really find out what makes their heart beat fast and why the performance is special for them, that's why this is different.
First of all, it's really, really fun to see your teachers put into practice what they kind of drill into you week after week. But also, more than drilling into practice and stuff, it's a great way to see the joy of making music, and a great way to see just how wonderful it can be making music with your friends who happen to be your colleagues.
Well, the concert series itself, we're starting this is our 8th year. And I believe it's been the past 5 that it's been sponsored in part by Boston Private. So we really only, I'd say for the past 5 years, have had this be a purely faculty series. As the conservatory's grown and the level of our faculty has grown, it's become more important to showcase them. Their students need to see them perform. That's really important, to sit in the audience and say, wow, not only as my teacher can she sing for me in the lesson, but she can get up there and sing, "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch," and it's really cool. So that part of it makes it very special. And so this series, I think, will just continue to grow. Right now we do 10 performances a year throughout the school year. And then, of course, in the summer we have different series, but they're not purely faculty. This one is only for faculty, and that's what makes it special.
The opportunity for students to engage with people who are not just teachers but also professional performers in their own right, and it's so unique.
South Shore Conservatory is a community school for the arts, and so our expectation is not that we're going to have the world's next concert pianist or opera star, although that has happened from South Shore Conservatory. We're really about access, about creating the whole person. Music makes you a better person. It makes you a more worldly person. It helps with your grades. Everyone knows that about the Mozart effect. But really, it's about community.
That's all for this month. Tune in next time for another exciting episode of Hingham Happenings. If you have any suggestions for a future episode, please email us at hinghamhappenings@hinghammedia.org. Thanks so much for watching.